everyone. My name is Ross Yelsey. I'm here at the admissions office at Columbia Journalism School. Thanks for tuning in and watching this recording of our MS in Data Journalism and dual MS in Journalism and Computer Science, our webinar that we just had. I'm actually recording this now because I realized that there was a technical snafu. So in the first maybe 5 minutes of the session, we didn't have audio. So I'm just going to excise that part. But just to let you know what you missed, we just introduced our participants, which were Professor Jonathan Soma, who's the director of the MS in Data Journalism program, Professor Dhrumil Mehta, who is a faculty member in the dual MS in Journalism and Computer Science program, as well as the MS in Data Journalism program. And he will talk in this webinar, in the part you'll watch later, more about the dual program. We also had two graduates last year of the MS in Data Journalism program, Katrina Ventura and Renata Dow, who are both speaking about their experience later on in the webinar. And otherwise, in terms of what we went over in the portion that you won't see, we talked a little bit about the differences between the programs, which will illuminate a lot more in the actual recorded portion. But the main thing to remember is that MS in Data Journalism is a 3-semester program for people who have not necessarily much background in data or computation, but want to go deep into data-related reporting. So reporting is the key thing to know. It's a program that's very much about using data as a key reporting source for investigative stories, but also other types of stories, whether it's about climate, business, government, all sorts of different things. That's what the data degree is there for. And then the dual MS in Journalism and Computer Science is for people with a computational background, either academically majoring in programs like computer science or minoring in programs like that, or having professional experience where they've been doing computer science at a very high level and can jump into a graduate level curriculum for computer science here at Columbia. And that program offers 2 master's degrees, as the dual degree indicates. It's a degree in journalism and a degree in computer science, and it's 2 academic years long, and then builds a lot of great skills in order to build apps, creates new tools, other types of software, other types of resources that journalists and newsrooms can use in the profession. So without further ado, I will transition back to the actual recording, but thank you for your bearing with us on that, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the webinar that we recorded. Thanks.
Hi everyone, I'm Katrina. I'm from the Philippines. Before I came to New York for the data journalism program, I did not do any data at all, did not know how to code, have tried Python, maybe touched it once and then gave up after 5 minutes. And then but I was a television producer back in the Philippines. I worked at CNN and I also worked at different investigations and also at podcasts. So that was basically my background. I did, and I considered going into data journalism just because we don't have a lot of data journalism where I come from. So in that part of the world, we don't do a lot of the cool stuff that you have here in the US. And so I was really willing to learn as much as I can so I could bring as much as I could back home.
Great. And I think Renata still might be doing some troubleshooting, so maybe we'll get back to her shortly. But maybe we can talk a little bit about the curriculum for both of the degrees. I'm going to share my screen to kind of help people get a better grasp, because we always hear questions like, what is it actually like to be a student here? Like, how do these classes even like unfold over these, semesters? And for the dual degree, 2 years of semesters. So we'll try to help give people a little bit more of a tangible sense of what it's like to be here. So one second, I'm just going to get my screen sharing going. Great. And then we'll go here. Great, and there is Professor Soma right there at work. And this is the data degree curriculum. So Soma, do you want to give us a little sense of, not in like every detail of every class, but kind of giving us a sense how over these 3 semesters, people are building these skills in reporting as well as in data analysis and all the different types of tools they'll need to excel on the job as data journalists?
Sure, absolutely. So the fall semester is all about building a foundation for you, both in terms of data analysis and programming and reporting. So you're doing your intro to reporting classes, you're doing your intro to data analysis classes, you're learning Python, you're learning how to write, you're learning how to report. All of those fundamentals are coming in there. When we hit the second semester, we're really putting these tools to work, especially in the aspect of data. So you're doing a lot of small, quick turnaround data and data visualization projects. You're doing a lot of statistical analyses, algorithmic pieces. You're working on seminar and production classes where you are kind of doing more reporting and writing than kind of the smaller exercises that you worked on in the first semester. And then when we hit the final semester there, now that you have learned the foundations, put everything into practice, you get to work on your master's project, which is your opportunity to work one-on-one with a master's project advisor to kind of put together a large story. Whereas you might have been able to do projects that spanned over a few weeks or even a full semester earlier on in the curriculum, this is the time where it's really driven by you and it's really gives you the opportunity to flesh out a large, complete, big, kind of like a capstone project. That will be a nice long story full of data analysis, full of sources, and something that many people aim to end up getting published. And along with that, you end up having a couple other data courses in the summer where you're kind of taking your skills to the next level. There's a mapping course. There's a course that is either about data investigations or interactive data visualization. So over the course of the semesters, it's really about building the foundation, then putting it to use, and then allowing you to kind of spread your wings and do something on your own.
Mhm. And just for people who are maybe less acquainted with Columbia's other degrees, most of our Master of Science programs are just 2 semesters. So the students are usually here for a fall and a spring. But our particular data program has another added semester in that summer course. So you'll have your cohort continue through that summer. There'll also be some people in the MS documentary specialization still here as well who graduate in August. So you're going to be having a good amount of the building to yourself in the summer to work on some of this with your data classmates. And just another thing to clarify, Soma, is that so people kind of ask about options in terms of exploring other areas of journalism.
Mhm.
That's really going to be in this 15-week seminar and production class in the spring, which is where people, as you were saying, can maybe do something that has something to do with data, but definitely don't have to. They could totally go in a different direction and do narrative podcasting or book writing or writing about, politics or religion or business or whatever other options are available for the full MS class.
Yeah, this program is very focused on turning you into a skilled data journalist. But we are absolutely, we understand the importance of being able to take these skills into other related fields. So whether it is you find a particular beat like healthcare or cross-border investigations, or narrative podcasting, specific skills like that, where you can kind of find another little outlet for all of these abilities.
Mhm. Great. And Katrina, when you're looking at this curriculum, can you tell us a little bit about some highlights of your time over these 3 semesters in these courses? Were there certain classes or projects that you remember very vividly from your time?
Yeah, of course. I mean, fall semester is it's very something I do remember the most. It's because you do have foundations there and that data and databases. So it's a very good it was a very good introduction to everything else. Pretty intense, I would have to say. Because you're gonna have to learn coding in half a semester. But when you do survive it, everything else in the spring is just gonna be a lot more interesting because it's applying all the things that you learned from there and actually doing a lot of cool stories. So I did appreciate our data computation innovation class because we had that was our data studio classes. So I was introduced to data visualizations, which is basically what I'm doing now at the Baltimore Banner, and also algorithms. So we got to try on a lot of different stories and actually do statistics on it, which I've never done before. And so I would say the spring semester is, as all data journalism students would say, is pretty intense.
Hmm.
But when you get to the summer, I feel like it's amazing because you get to specialize on exactly what kind of work you want to do. And
Hmm.
that does help you like springboard to the next thing that you would want to work on after you graduate. So for me, it was definitely data visualization. And now I'm happy that I'm at the Baltimore Banner and I'm working on some data viz stuff with my professor from the data viz um from the data viz class. So Annie is also a freelancer at the Baltimore Banner. So it was great.
Great. And what was the class you chose for your seminar and production that semester?
Yeah, so I basically chose like narrative writing. So it was journalist I wanted to learn more about like the writing aspect of journalism because I come from a television background. It's always been very visual, but then to try to write things as a story, as a long form, as a book, that was very interesting for me, and I felt like I was exposed to a lot of really good literature that I wouldn't have gotten anywhere else. So it was a good sort of reprieve from all of the data heavy stuff that we were doing that semester because I was just reading a lot of like really good prose that you can only get from good journalism writing.
Mhm. Thank you. I think Renata, I think you may be back in
Sure.
that. So I was going to see if you have any memories or particular classes and projects too that you wanted to highlight from your time in the data program.
Yeah, so jokes on me, I complain about doing data studio, like coming up with a story every 2 weeks, but I'm doing that every week in my job. Because we have like a thing called like CT stats that I basically do like show like different aspects of Connecticut in like statistics. So like I do like visualizations and stuff, and I'm doing that every week. So LOL. Um, and another class that okay, so during the program, Dhrumil knows I was having so much trouble with like census data and doing like the coding for that part. And I've been using that so much in my job for like everything to see like unemployment, to see like how like foreign born population Connecticut, to see anything. So like I'm using that all the time. And I was like screaming and crying, kicking my way through it during the program. But like now that I kind of like got the hang of it, I'm using it like also a lot. So I feel like those like two classes are what I'm doing as my job.
Yeah, and I think just to answer the question we weren't able to kind of hear from you earlier was maybe briefly, what was your thought process about why, you wanted to kind of challenge yourself and get into this kind of data training? What was your kind of initial inspiration to come to this program?
Oh yeah, so basically, um, I did international relations and journalism in undergrad,
Mhm.
and for like my math credits, like for general education and things like that, I had to like pick like a math class, and I ended up like doing like two computer science classes, which I really liked. And why did I come back in that? I'm just gonna pick myself up. So basically, I really liked it, and I was actually talking to an alum from the program, Bianca. She's from Argentina, and I was just like talking to her, and she was like, "Oh, if you really like this data part, like you should do the program." And I started looking into it, and I got really interested. So that's how I ended up in the program.
Oh, great. Great. So now we'll turn it back over to the dual degree, and I'll have Drew Milk tell us a little bit about that. One second here. Um, Drew Milk, do you want to talk? Again, not in every detail. You
Yes.
probably could be here for about a year talking about everything in detail, but a little bit how the 2 years unfold for people in this dual degree program.
Yeah, so the benefit of being here for the dual MS is you are here for 2 years instead of 1 year. And so for those of you who are new to journalism, the first year you really can just figure out what the field is all about, and then you have a whole summer to start thinking through what your thesis is going to be and how are you really going to push the envelope and combine these two disciplines and produce something truly innovative. And so there's a lot of time to kind of soak it all in. What you're seeing here is the journalism side of the curriculum. There is also a computer science side. So you'll notice some places it says 4Cs classes, 2Cs classes. There's a core set of classes that you take over at computer science. It includes things like databases and what you would kind of expect in a computer science degree. And then there's a bunch of additional sort of elective classes. So you can pick a track like AI or systems or what have you. And one of those tracks is the dual degree track. And basically, there, if you can sort of justify that the class is sort of journalism adjacent in one way or another, in a sort of very loose way, that counts as one of the track classes. So, for example, you might take an image processing class, and you might come back in the J school and use that for satellite imagery stuff, or you might take a natural language processing class and then come back to the J school and use that to parse like 100,000 legal cases or something like that, right? And so, like, as long as there's some sort of possible connection to journalism, it can count as one of those courses. The journalism curriculum is largely the same as our general MS. So you've got reporting, which is the first three August, September, and October. It's really a time for you to learn the fundamentals of reporting, especially if you're new to it, or if you come with a reporting background to really kind of shore up those bona fides. Then you get the kind of law and ethics and business and history and all of these sort of fundamentals courses in journalism. And then you have a class called Investigative Techniques, which helps you utilize things like, investigating companies, investigating corruption, looking at documents, filing public records requests, accessing court records, stuff like that. And then in that fall semester of the second year, that's when you have Frontiers of Computational Journalism, which is the class that I mentioned earlier, where we're kind of exploring the uses of predictive modeling in journalism. It is an awesome class. The kinds of stories we do there, I think it's hard to replicate kind of anywhere else. And then you have a seminar and production class, which is a sort of elective that you can take, as well as image and sound is also an elective that you can take. So it's a wide-ranging curriculum with a lot of room for maneuvering into something that really is of interest to you, or exploring a lot of different topics.
Great. And Katrina and Renata were talking a bit about their master's project and thinking about that in the data program. What are master's projects like in terms of what students maybe could accomplish in this program?
Yeah, so traditionally master's projects in the journalism school are stories, but in the dual degree program, it is a wide range of things we will call acts of journalism going, one master's project that I advised was a deeply reported story about sailors who are stuck at sea after COVID and coming out of Chinese ports. And so while that student was a dual degree student, he got really into sort of more shoe leather reporting, and that, he used some data on shipping routes and whatnot, but it was a story. On the other end of the spectrum, we had a student publish a paper in IEEE about what kinds of captions are most memorable when doing data visualization, right? And so we have kind of the academic paper version. We had a student build an app that would detect, like when journalists go out and do reporting, it can sort of detect hate symbols in a protest. We lately have had a lot of students kind of working with artificial intelligence. So we had a student last year whose thesis was around unlocking semantic search for data collection in newsrooms. And she helped to build semantic search pipelines that could help, for example, the Washington Post identify instances of police officers who are fatally shooting civilians, kind of data collection projects for newsrooms. We had a student who got really into AR, VR and wanted to do something with, augmented reality in data visualization. And for her, we didn't have an in-house AR, VR person. So we brought in Henry Kaiser, who was the former head of AR, VR at Yahoo News, to be her thesis advisor. And so because it's such a small program, we can even hire advisors specific to that person's interests, and that can guide the rest of the curriculum as well. The data students, because of this, were also offered a workshop on AR, VR, which I think Katrina and Renata may have attended. And so, because it's such a small program, we can really customize it to you. And in some ways, things that you do or whatever your interests are may shape curricula for other parts of the school as well.
Great. And just one quick question people might be thinking, looking at the 2 years, is what people might do between the 2 years, like in that summer. What is something that's typically kind of done by a dual student in that term in between?
Yeah, there's so many things you can do. Some students really decide they're interested in doing some reporting somewhere, going abroad, like figuring out getting their thesis started. You don't technically start your thesis until the second year, but if you're really interested in proactive and you have something that involves international travel or embedding somewhere, like that might be something that you could consider. A lot of students take internships. Obviously you also have the CS degree going on. So all of the internships that a traditional CS student would take would be open to you. We have students work in newsrooms, work in tech companies, sort of all kinds of things. So it is a longer program. In some ways it's a more expensive program, but you also come out with 2 degrees, including a computer science master's degree.
Mm-hmm. Great. And Soma, let's go back to a question that we often get for every program we offer is like, what can people do with this training? What are some career paths of data journalism graduates thus far?
Yeah, so this is always the problem. In the same way that I say data journalism isn't necessarily a specific type of journalism, it is supplemental to journalism. You can end up doing anything. We've had folks who, Bianca was mentioned before, she works with the Times doing kind of more of the analysis back end sort of things, oftentimes dealing with things like corruption. So that is not data viz, that is not very presentation focused, that is much more investigative. But then you might have someone who, just spins out interactive graphics for a newsroom and they're solely focused on visuals. Oftentimes, the people who work on a graphics desk are some of the most technically advanced people who are in a newsroom because they have to acquire the data, clean the data, and then go through some technical hoops in order to make it tell that story. You can have people who just work specific beats. A student from a few years ago, Eileen Peng, she works at Bloomberg as the soft commodities reporter. So she reports on cocoa and coffee and sugar and maybe sometimes cotton. And there's just like a very strict list of things, which the commodities are that she does report on and which ones she doesn't. And so it's just for any sort of job that exists in journalism, from beat reporting to investigative to working on visuals, data can always play a role. And it depends on what you are interested in when you join the program. Most people who come into the program do not have a very good idea of exactly what it is they want out of data. But over the course of the program, we introduce you to every single aspect of data journalism. And so you're able to say, oh, like this is actually fun. Like I didn't think I was going to be a visualizations person, but picking colors for charts and kind of trying to think of a way to convince the reader to pay attention to something complicated actually seems interesting. So maybe I'll pursue that later on. So it is, very wide ranging in what you can do, but we kind of walk you through all the different options over the course of the program and you figure out what resonates with you best.
Great. There's a career development office that, of course, works with people in the data journalism and the dual program who have, full-time jobs here. We have 3 people full-time who work with our students to help navigate the different type of career paths that are out there, and then also bring in a lot of, newsrooms and other organizations who are recruiting for different opportunities. So, as a student here, no matter which program you're in, you're going to have a really good amount of counseling and connection making throughout the year and 2 years potentially if you're in the dual degree program to learn a lot about different jobs you could potentially get into with this training.
Yeah, just for the dual degree program, I'd add that you have access to the entire career services department in journalism school. You also have access to the whole career services department in the computer science school. And then the problem is the roles that these students are interested in, there are so few of them and they're so like weird and niche that like there's only 5 students in the program, and let's say you want to do election night statistical modeling at the Washington Post, right? Not, the professors in the program know the people who are doing that, and so we can connect you to these like really specific niche roles of like, I want to do AR data visualization in climate, at a big TV station or something. Like there are just very specific things that some dual degree students are interested in. And so in addition to both career services departments, the alumni of that program and the professors in the program can really help you connect to like whichever niche you decide is super interesting for you.
Cool. And maybe since we were just talking about careers now, about the dual program, Dhrumil, could you tell us a little bit about where people have gone on to work with this dual degree?
Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, kind of everything from gone on to get PhDs, work in academia, work in newsrooms. We have students working on the editorial side of newsrooms. We do have a student working on election modeling stuff at the Washington Post. We've got the student I mentioned earlier who had built the pipeline now builds pipelines at the Washington Post. Lately, because of the explosion of AI, I think a lot of our graduates have gone on to like do AI stuff and build AI pipelines in newsrooms. We have students working in research labs. We have students working at, like Google Trends, Google, the sort of large tech companies at like editorial adjacent products. So really, I think it's like, it's a yes and situation, right? So like everything that a journalism student would be eligible for working in, you could do. Anything that you could, coming out of the CS school, you would be able to do, you could do. And then we have these additional sets of roles that are like really blending these 2 disciplines that are that you may be interested in as well.
Great. And since we have Katrina and Renata here, and they're currently working, as I mentioned, Katrina's at the Baltimore Banner, Renata's at the CT Connecticut Mirror right now. Maybe we'll hear a little bit about the work you've been doing in these roles and how your training has been helpful in terms of what you're doing day to day. Anyone want to start with that, Katrina or Renata?
I can start. So I feel like I've been doing kind of like everything that I've like kind of like touched on the program. So like I've like long working on like long-term projects that are more like reporting based. And then I have like the short-term little projects that are like basically um summer's class that we did data studio. So I'm doing that like every week. So those are the two main things that I do. And other than that, like sometimes I have other reporters that come to me and they're like, "Hey, I have the story. I feel like data would be useful. Like I don't know what to look for. Can you help me?" So I just also like help other reporters. So I feel like I'm doing a little bit of everything. Um, for like the reporting part, one thing that I had a lot of trouble in the program was like contacting people because they would not respond. When you are working, they do respond. So like when you call people, they're like, "Yeah, I'll talk to you," and I was like so shocked about that because I was begging for people to talk to me, and now like people just like reply right away, which is like great. Makes life easier. And yeah, like I feel like a lot of like the things that I learned in the program that I was like having a little bit trouble with, it was just like a practice thing. So like as the more that I'm doing it, the easier it gets and like the faster I do it as well. So I don't know, like right now, things that I did like in the first semester that was like, this is impossible. I do it in like 30 minutes. So,
That's
and
great.
it's just like part of my daily job. So yeah.
Oh, good. And we're just sharing the screen now. This is a story, I think, from last week that you had done about DACA recipients in Connecticut and some data about that.
Oh, that story, fun fact, I did in like an hour.
Oh, wow.
So like I was in a phone call with like a like a person who like deals with like DACA recipients, and they called me and they're like, "Listen, there's this thing on like October 10th that I think you should cover." I was like to my editor, I was like, "Hey, I heard about this thing on October 10th," and he was like, "You have an hour."
Wow.
So I did that. I did like super quick, which is why it's like super short.
Hmm.
But yeah.
That's impressive, though. Yeah, that's great. And then seeing all these, graphs and visuals and all that stuff is, yeah, it's a terrific way to kind of convey the information to people. Great. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So Katrina, let's talk about your work at the Baltimore Manor. I have another story from a couple
Yeah.
of weeks ago too, but it also has some really interesting graphics to look at issues about climate too. Can you talk about kind of how you're using data in your work?
Yeah, of course. So I've done the whole breaking news stuff before in television, so I don't do the same stories as or at least at the same pace that Renata is doing right now. I've actually resigned myself to doing more data viz and just doing more like yeah, just basically more front end stuff for the more cool stuff for the Baltimore Banner. They don't have a data viz person currently, and so as an intern, I basically have all of the projects and I work on this for a couple of weeks. But this is a quick one that I just did on the summer data. I just looked at summer data and I visualized it. I had a popsicle there and a bunch of scatter plots that I basically used AI to HTML for. So Adobe Illustrator and also just basically created my own templates for the banner. So that's what I've been doing. I also created the news quiz for them. So it's very new for the banner because they've done news quizzes before, but they haven't done one that involved Lambda functions that would get from an API gateway from AWS. So those are just a bunch of stuff that I didn't even know about before, but I do know how to figure my way out of like some code and how to troubleshoot myself out of like some debugs or errors that I'm getting. So that definitely helped me out. So I thought all the while that I'll just be doing front end like this stuff, but when they asked me to work on the back end as well, I'm like, yeah, might as well just give it a shot. And yeah, I was able to do it. And now I'm currently working on the live results for the elections night. They haven't done that they've tried it before with templates like Data Wrapper, but it always just broke because the system just couldn't handle the many subscribers that are accessing the data at the same time. And so now I'm working on it with E3 and JavaScript. So two things that I'm currently teaching myself again how to do. And yeah, it's been great. It's still a learning experience.
Sure. Great. And Dhrumil, I thought I'd ask you about one of the key resources. We'll talk about a couple of them, but first, the Tao Center for Digital Journalism, which I know you're one of the leaders of at the school. What are some resources, some opportunities this center can provide for people interested in, of course, technology and journalism?
Yeah, so we have a couple of different research centers at the school. The Tao Center, which I'm the deputy director of, we do a lot of work studying things like media ecosystems, like the power dynamics between news organizations and tech companies, and now also AI companies. We have a project called the Platforms and Publishers Project, where every month we're keeping track of all the different occurrences, like news events at the intersection of the when large tech companies sort of come into contact with news. We also have a research avenue that we're calling sort of pink slime journalism. So these are things that seem like journalism but are not journalism. A lot of local newspapers around the country have been closing down, and in their place, there are websites that are popping up that are oftentimes bot, like 80% of the content is bot generated, the other 20% is human generated, but it's like political propaganda in essence, or it's somebody just trying to make a buck off of ad revenue. But increasingly, we're seeing things like this pop up in the place of where local news is shutting down, and there's sort of a gap, right? And so we use both reporting and computational methods to study these kinds of questions and to better understand the news ecosystem and how we can plug in. I'll briefly speak also about the Brown Institute, which was run by Mark Hansen, who, there you go, in this wonderful space. Traditionally, Tao does more research and Brown builds stuff. That barrier is kind of fuzzy, but they have a big local news project going on. They give out these magic grants, which are up to, I think, $150,000 per team. If you're a Columbia student, it's also a lab that's run across Columbia Journalism and Stanford Engineering. So if you collaborate with someone from there, you're eligible to I think apply for up to $300,000, might be a little bit more. If you have a sort of really innovative project that you want to build. They have a local news project and a local news lab that connects with sort of local news organizations all over the country and helps them access, build tools for them, access the kinds of sort of advanced technical capabilities that large newsrooms might have access to in-house because of their engineering talent. So it's a really dynamic space. Students are hanging out there all day long. A lot of the techie stuff that happens at the school happens in this big open space. You can see my office in the corner upstairs there. So it's just a really, really fun, innovative place to kind of hang out and spend your days while you're here.
Indeed, yeah, it's one of my favorite spots in the school as well, just down the hall from me as well. But Katrina and Renata, any experiences you had with either the Tao or Brown that have been helpful in the work that you do?
Yeah, of course. So the great thing about the Brown Institute is it always exposes you to new things. So they do have a lot of workshops that you can attend to. I'm actually still looking into like some workshops that I could maybe crash to because they're amazing. You do realize like you get exposed to the new tools that people are using, and also everyone's just very friendly. Like I still have some friends from the Brown Institute who yeah, I see every now and then. So it's amazing.
Great. Cool. And then, Renata, did you have anything you wanted to add to that, or you can move on as well?
Yeah, I think for me it was also the workshops because I tried to attend as many as I could. So and they had like some that were kind of like related to like the classes that we were taking, so that also like helped.
Mhm. Great. So now I think for people who are watching this right now or are going to watch the recording later, they're wondering about, if they're thinking one of these programs is the right fit for them at this point. They're kind of wondering now I'm putting together an application. What should I think about? So, Soma, maybe for the MS in data journalism applicants who might be out there, what do you look for in like a strong application to that program when you are reviewing applications each year?
Yeah, I feel like the thing that we always have to stress is you do not need a technical background to join this program. We start you from nothing. And even if you do have a bit of a technical background, we always have a startling number of people who come from physics. But whether you're just a normal person who studied something and worked at your college paper, or whatever it might be, do not worry about the technical side of things. We have that all covered. Mostly what we're looking for is a passion and a desire to tell stories and the sort of larger scale stories that might require data use. The program is an intense program. It's a tough little program. So you do need to be, committed to it in order to be a wonderfully successful person in it. But don't look at yourself and say, oh, this program seems like too much. This seems like something I wouldn't be able to handle. Because we are here to make sure that you can, and we are here to give you all of those infinite powers. Because as Katrina was saying, like you are learning new things all of the time as a data journalist. And what we teach you in the program is how to acquire these new skills. You are constantly in a case of having to reinvent. You are constantly in a situation where you're picking up something new. And the kind of idea of, I don't know exactly what's going on, but I'm learning something new and I'm enjoying it, is really what we're aiming for here. So yeah, just be interested, ready to tell stories, ready to talk to some people on the street and write some interviews and learn some data.
Cool. And then, Dhrumil, for people thinking about the dual degree as like something they may want to apply for, and they might be thinking similarly, what are you looking for, for people who want to do this type of program, aside from, of course, we talked about the technical knowledge and kind of that background, but in terms of what things would stand out for a strong applicant to this program?
Yeah, if you're not sure if the program is right for you, feel free to reach out. I think I've helped a bunch of students decide whether data or dual is right for them. And I do think that like it's just a different profile of student. It's a different kind of program. For the dual program, we're on the technical side, we're primarily looking for, can you survive the master's degree program in computer science? Like, do you have the requisite background to do that? And then on the journalism side, we understand that our applicants come from a wide range of backgrounds. Some of them have worked in journalism professionally. Some of them have only worked on their school papers. Some of them are just journalism curious, like you write for fun and you have an interest in social issues and you have an engineering degree and you want to be a journalist. And we're open to all of those kinds of applications. Primarily what we are looking for is that you understand what journalism is and what journalism school is and like what we teach, and you're ready and willing to like go out into the streets and do interviews and like things you wouldn't normally do in engineering school, which you do a lot of here. It's a very hands-on curriculum. We send you out into New York, like you're out there reporting. You're going to be asked to talk to all kinds of people who you may not have spoken with otherwise. So we're looking for openness and an understanding of like what that curriculum is, and that you're signing up for that willingly.
Mhm. Great. And for Renata and Katrina, what advice would you have for people who are thinking about grad school? I know that Renata, you mentioned hearing from a previous grad about kind of, thinking about applying. What would you say to another generation of potential applicants thinking about the journalism school?
Like for me is that um so I did say that I took like a two computer science classes, but like what I learned in those computer science classes was like nothing like what I learned in the program. So like when I was going into it, I feel like I was going like from zero. So like a lot of the times I was like, oh, I'm like falling behind, or like people know like way more than I do. So, but like I felt like it was it's a lot of practice. Like the more that you practice, the more that you learn, and the more like you get used to it, and then you're doing it. So if you don't have like any like background or don't know anything, just like go into it, and you know you're gonna probably be really confused in the beginning, but like the more that you're doing it, like you get used to it, and then suddenly like you're doing it. And like one thing that is like very that Katrina mentioned is that like I feel like a large part of like the program that I learned is just like how to solve your own problems. Because like a lot of things like just like show up like on the daily and people ask me, I won't have to solve this and I'm like, I actually don't know, but I'm gonna look it up. And then I come up with like a solution that in and that just like happens like in the daily and it's not just on the coding side. I feel like there's also like on the interview side or like when you're like writing down like a story, like who to contact. It's just like I feel like it's all like a big puzzle piece and you're just like slowly like putting everything together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Katrina, how about you? What would you say to people thinking about school here?
Yeah, of course. Actually, my main advice would be just get over your imposter syndrome. It's not real. Like you can definitely do all of these things. It took me maybe 5 years just dreaming about Colombia and then finally deciding to apply. But I feel like if you know how, if you just knew how like helpful people are and how nice the teachers are, how kind the TAs are. I mean, I'll be a teaching assistant, so I mean, yeah, we are very welcome and we are very helpful. So just get over the imposter syndrome. Definitely just do it because you'll be able to overcome anything, to be honest. Yeah, just try, just apply.
That's great. That's great advice for any of our programs. Data journalism,
Yeah.
dual degree, MS, MA, everything. Yes, the imposter syndrome, definitely. I know it happens in your minds, oftentimes happened in mine as a student here, but definitely something to get over and to definitely go for it. Because I think this is a place where if you have that passion to tell stories in whatever format, you're going to get amazing training. You're going to succeed here. So definitely, that's great advice. So we have about a few minutes just for some questions. So anyone who's attending, please put those in the chat. Address them to me, Ross, the host, and I can ask a few if we have time for those. And then, of course, I put a link earlier in the chat for people who maybe have more specific questions about educational financing, application requirements, all the kind of nitty-gritty details of applying. Join us for maybe a session that's more focused on that in the future, or set up a one-on-one chat with our team through this link as well. So we won't get to everything in detail today, but anything we can maybe pose to our participants about the data and dual program, please put that in the chat for now. Oh, I see a question here. Good question about just what is like the general student community like here at the school? That's something we didn't maybe talk about, but is very important to think about. If Katrina or Renata want to touch on just generally what it's like to be a member of this community here at the J School.
Yeah, I mean, we have so many clubs. You'll definitely find your people. If you like once you're in the WhatsApp group, you'd be surprised. Some people just want to do running. Some people just want to do like dancing. Some people are just interested in like just other things. And so I feel like there's definitely a community for everyone here. And you forget that you're in New York. I mean, you're gonna find your people one way or the other. It's always someone who also has the shares the same kind of like niche stuff that you would be interested in. And everyone's just very friendly. I feel like Colombia as a community is very open. Like people do just come in and out. And you do see like even in the workshops, like sometimes or in some of the conferences that I would attend in Colombia, like I would see people who are not the who are alumni or maybe like people who are just interested in learning more about journalism and just having that conversation with them is yeah, it's worth your while. It's a very open community to be part of.
Renata.
Yeah. For me, like I would say that at least like my cohort, like I feel like people were like really helpful. So like if I had like questions in class, like sometimes like if the TAs were like not like there, like it was like not TA time and I was like desperate, I would just like reach out to like someone in the class and they would like help me through it. So like I feel like you're like even like your class, everybody's kind of like on the same boat, so like they will help you because they know like what's like going on. Katrina has helped me with like school stuff. Um, like in general, like to make friends and things and like what Katrina said too, like everybody has like different like hobbies and stuff like that, and definitely someone shares the same hobbies as you do. I got really into cycling when I was in New York, so like I even made like a little piece on cycling. And it was really easy to find people to go cycling with me, so you're gonna find your people. It's easy.
I think we have maybe a minute more to chat. So one last question. I see a few more about admissions things and about the requirements. So join us for another session for those on that link. But for Soma, someone was just wondering between the MS in data journalism and this LEAD program, which is our non-degree program that has data training, what are some of the differences in terms of what you would get out of those two opportunities here?
So the big difference is lead is 10 weeks long and the data journalism masters is 12 months long. So even though you do get exposed to a lot of technical content in the lead program, you actually get a chance to use it and apply it much, 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 much more and get a deeper understanding over the course of year-long data MS program. On top of that, the data MS also focuses on journalism. You kind of learn the data in step with learning how to write and report and use all those traditional skills. Lead is a little bit more of a maybe mid-career, quick professional program for someone, as opposed to a really kind of full-fledged, let's turn you into a wonderful, perfect data journalist. But I can also chat with people individually about that because it's super specific as to what program ends up being better for people. So feel free to drop me an email and we can set up a time.
Right, someone's just wondering if they can contact you. So I think on your page on the faculty website, Soma, there's a way to connect either email or a Calendly, I think. Or
Yes, I will drop my email address in the chat and my Calendly in the chat. And so you're free to just book a Zoom meeting with me there or drop me an email because my schedule's pretty open right now. So I can make a lot more time than what my Calendly has available.
great. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Professor Soma, Professor Mehta. Thank you to Katrina and Renata for tuning in from, I know, a busy workday, I'm sure, to chat more about their experience in this program. And again, if you have other questions, reach out to our admissions office through that link, and we'll talk more about specific application and other types of questions in the coming weeks as well. And luckily, again, as I said, many, many weeks still before applications are due. So continue the conversation with our faculty, with us, about which programs make sense for you in your mind, and we'll help you kind of make sure that you are applying to the program that would make the best sense for your goals and the skills that you would bring to the school. So thank you again, everyone. Have a great weekend. Thanks again for all the good questions. And if you had questions we didn't get to today, reach out to us and we can continue that chat. Okay, bye now. Take care, everyone.